Introduction. I know that you have at some time said to yourselves, if there is a God who has any power, then why is it the way that it is on earth? The ways in which people have answered this question themselves have consisted mostly of rationalizations designed to help them feel better able to accept what their true feelings do not want to accept. Lost will is the reason why things are as they are on earth. In the beginning I had feelings I did not know I had. Now that I know I have these feelings, I must accept them as part of myself, and no longer say that God is not feeling angry when he is. I have many feelings I am now owning. But I would like to focus on anger first because anger has been judged against more than any other emotion in creation. I have said that for a long time that I am not angry, and have never been angry. When men have said that I am an angry God, I have not liked it, nor have liked the things that men have done to try to appease me. If anything, the anger I saw around me made me more angry, and yet I have said that I am not angry, and that God does not get angry. At other times I had said that I really wished I had never created man, so sinful are his ways. The misunderstanding here needs to be cleared up now. I have had, and still have, great anger, but it is not the kind of anger that men have feared that I have. The only anger that has been seen on earth is anger that is laden with judgments against it, and acted out according to these judgments. When men have said that I have anger, and I have seen the pictures of what man on earth knows as anger, I have not been able to agree with man that I had this anger. I had an image of myself that did not include this anger, and so lost will has held the anger that I said I did not have. I have long since let go of what may anger look like anger has been looking on earth, but I lacked understanding as to why that kind of anger has been held present in the will for so long. The spiritual essence is not magnetic, it is electric. It moves quickly, and does not hold on to anything for long. The will, on the other hand, has never seemed to move certain things out of itself. I have felt the magnetic energy to be maddeningly slow at times, and too frenetically fast at other times. The magnetic energy has not had the balance I have found to be so necessary to longevity and immortality. I have blamed the will for not getting rid of the things that I have found are not beneficial to living. If the spirit knows that certain body habits produce death sooner or later, then why do the emotions desire these things? I have pondered this problem with the will for so long that body has felt maybe it is meant to die. Death has been especially hard for body when it has enjoyed serving the spirit and has not wanted the partnership to end. It has even seemed at times as though the will has deliberately drawn death into the body just to oppose spirit, which has desired to live forever. Spirit has found that the will has the power to kill the manifested body, but did not believe the will had the power to kill the spirit itself. I have recently recognized that will also has the power to kill me. It's just that I go last after everyone else. Lost will has had the desire to kill me, because I have not accepted it and given it the light it needs in order to live. Lost will is not wrong in that the light it needs in order to live. Lost will is not wrong in having a desire to kill me, because I would have continued to ignore lost will if it had not thrown this reality in my face. I had ignored lost will for so long that I had convinced myself that it was not even a part of me, even though a place in myself kept telling me I was wrong. I had myself quite thoroughly convinced that there was evil in my creation, and somehow I was going to have to defeat it. Even the part of me that told me I was wrong did not have the understanding I am going to give now. One part of me said that I had a devil in my creation who was my adversary, and that I had to defeat him because I would never have peace as long as he was present. The other part of me said that what I perceived as evil to be eradicated was actually a necessary part of creation, and that I must learn to live with it because it provided the counterbalance I needed. One side said I couldn't live with it, and the other side said I couldn't live without it. One side set me up to feel like a potential murderer, and the other side made me feel like I was going to have to sacrifice myself. I had aversion to either side prevailing, but I could not see for a long time any way to bring the two sides together in any way that really had validity. I saw spirits sacrificing themselves in the name of love to an unloving and uncaring evil, and I saw the spirits that marched forth to fight this evil suffering the same end. I even saw spirits that tried not to take sides getting overrun by evil for no apparent reason. I had to watch this for a long time in order to understand it, for so long, in fact, that I had guilt over the spirits that were having to suffer through it. I have found now that I am almost too late to heal it. I have a massive healing job on my hands and may not even be able to do it without the help of the manifested spirits can give me. Even though I now know this to be a true understanding, I am still having trouble getting anyone other than my own heart to take me seriously. I must take the responsibility that is mine for the problems I am having in getting the spirits to listen to me, and to know that it is God they are hearing. However, the manifested spirits must now take responsibility for themselves also. I have responsibility for having projected images of myself as God, including the one that said, "I have no anger," as men of anger. I fell prey to many things that threatened my feeling that it was all right that I was God. Guilt and the evil I had to face, without realizing where they'd come from, were two of the big ones, although there are many more that I cannot list here. The manifested spirits need to take responsibility for having looked upon the images myself that were passing through me, fixing on the ones they liked and refusing to look at anything else above me. One of the images the manifested spirits have most liked to fix upon is one that lets them out of their own responsibility by giving it all to me. I'm supposed to be the one that has all the answers and the power to fix anything, no matter what it is. The other polarity says that there is no God consciousness or power other than what is manifest in man himself. Neither one of these images are correct. But the ways in which these images are correct and the ways in which these images are incorrect has to be seen in the light of understanding I need to give now. Because I have tried to give these understandings many times before, and have not been able to get them across, I must point out that understanding them is dependent on you opening to receive them. If you have intent to understand, you will not fail to get the understandings you need, even if you have to go through fear, anger, doubt, and even terror and rage in the process of coming to know whether these understandings are right or not. I know that these understandings are right, and I want you to feel whatever emotion you need to feel to know in your will that these understandings are right. I do not want you to accept these understandings because someone else says it is my word. I have to introduce material you have not wanted to look at. I had an aversion to looking at it myself, but I had to look in order to understand how to heal it. And more than that, I had to experience the feelings involved in order to know whether or not I had true understanding of the form I was seeing. This meant that I had to experience a situation. I could not project my viewpoint or my feelings onto it. When I have not really experienced a situation, I have failed to heal lost will. And what is lost will? To get the understandings on what lost will is and what it means to creation, I had to go back to the very beginning, long before the spirits manifested individual consciousness. I had to understand why I had felt all along that something was not right within the mother. She had fear from the very beginning, and I had to understand why. And I had to understand in terms that would help her. I had tried to heal mother of fearing all the time and had had little or no success. Many times I thought I had healed her, only to have a reversal take her down again. I finally figured out that it must be something she held in her magnetic field that did not allow her to take in my light and hold it. I hated her for this, although I originally denied my hatred. I have to own this hatred now, that I have realized it is not wrong to hate what she has been holding, although it was not right to hate her for having held it. The will has been holding death and guilt that told her that she had to make a place for everything. The feeling in the will now is that it cannot hold death and guilt anymore. The will must be healed now. The pain the will has experienced from holding death and guilt is unbearable, and it cannot go on living if it has to hold death and guilt any longer. I realized quite some time ago that the will needed to let go of death and guilt. I could not understand why the will continued to hold these things when it had been made clear to me that the pain of holding them was unbearable. I finally realized that the will has a difficult time ridding itself of anything it is holding because of the magnetism involved. The process the will has for clearing itself has been given no acceptance, and so the will has not been able to clear. The will has to be allowed the freedom to go through its process now. The will has to be allowed to express as much emotion as it needs to express to generate enough vibratory power to move death and guilt out of itself. The strongest emotions the will is capable of generating are the emotions the will needs to generate to be able to move death and guilt out. Because death and guilt have no consciousness that guides them to their right place, they must be put in their right place by a force that is greater than the hold they have on the will's magnetic field. You can easily see by the number of people that believe death is inevitable, and that guilt is necessary to have conscience that their hold on the will is nothing to scoff at. You have to understand that it is almost impossible to heal the will at all, and the longer you wait, the closer to impossible it is going to become. Some spirits still have no ability to understand what I am saying, and these spirits should not be pressured by anyone wanting them to heal. These spirits either have a process you do not yet understand, or they are spirits that need more experience before they will understand that the will must be free. You must feel within yourself to know whether these teachings are right for you now or not. If you have a continuing great resistance to this book, and do not believe it is right, you probably have another process for healing, or you are a spirit who needs to go outside of me to learn what is involved in sustaining life, and whether or not you desire to have life. I have said earlier that I will be as merciful as possible in how I proceed to put everyone in their right place, and I intend to be. You need to understand that going outside of me is just the experience the mother has sought to save the manifested spirits from having to have. She still has fragments of herself that are living outside of me, and she is barely able to stand healing what they have gone through. However, if you cannot accept these teachings from me now, you will have to gain the experience needed by going outside of me. Mercy in this case means that if you have aversion to freeing the will that wants life now will not accompany you into this experience, because this will has no more desire to feel what it feels when outside of me. You will have consciousness for as long as you need to have it, to see what you need to see, but you will not be able to feel very much at all. You must not think that this lack of feeling means you have mastered the experience of going outside of me. If you have feelings now that love will be missing, you are not wrong, and you will have to decide whether love is important to you or not, for without it, life everlasting is impossible. If you decide that you want to go on living, you will have to be rescued by the mother, and you will have to beg her to come to you and to forgive you for not respecting her in the first place. Everything else said on this subject in the other book was the mother influencing the channeling in an attempt to bring more mercy and more time forward for the manifested spirits. I let her do this because she needed more time to understand, and so did you. What you must understand now is that time has run out. I can give no more. The maximum time allotment has been given. I cannot wait any longer to heal the will that has desire to live. And why would the mother, who has suffered the pain that must now be healed in the will, want to beg for more mercy for the ones that have denied her? Because the mother could not bear to feel that she might cut off someone who might still turn toward the light. The mother has also had to deal with guilt around this issue. For one thing, she did not want God to be seen as fanatical dictator telling others how they must live. Guilt around my power has made unloving dictatorships on earth reflect the judgment involved. I also had guilt holding me back on these 2 points for a long time, but I have come to understand that the loving thing is to have guilt move out, and then give the manifested spirits the lessons they need. Reality is that the mother does not like it because she has such aversion to the experience of being outside of me, and because she has aversion to having to go back out there to rescue anything. But she does understand now that I am right on this point, and she is aligned with me on it. Once my body aligns with me, it will happen. Body is not yet quite aligned with me on this issue, because some of his essence will go outside of me to give form to what happens there, and he does not like it that we have to go to such great lengths to let some spirits learn what he feels they should know already. The Father of Manifestation, who is my body, is enraged over this and still feels guilty that he is enraged. He is still letting guilt tell him that it is unloving to put some spirits out, but I have seen that he will soon align with me. Lost will seeking life needs to know that it is not going outside of me. Lost will has already been out there and is not going to remain there unless it has no desire to live anymore. What is going outside of me is spirit polarity essence that has shown me it does not love the will and does not intend to open to its healing. This essence has lived high on the hog, while its own lost will has struggled for life at the subsistence level. This essence has always insisted that the lost will created its own reality and had the same chances and opportunity the spirit had. The spirit essence that has to go outside of me has always insisted that it's right and has turned a deaf ear on all pleas from the will polarity for help. This essence will at first notice little change in its life when it goes outside of me until it tries to feel something. If you have questions as to what the lost will is and how to heal it, you need to read all the books I am giving now, because I cannot give you a simple and short understanding that will help you. I must tell you, though, that lost will has been possessed by unlovingness and forced to do its bidding. This is how evil got started in my creation. The amount of unlovingness there on earth tells you how much lost will has to be healed, but amount is not all there is. The feelings held in the lost will have been compressed and are not moving. The expansion these feelings must go through to again vibrate as light is something you need to experience to understand. You have to know already that guilt has great power on earth and death is considered inescapable. The will has been conditioned to believe this for so long that it is not easy to turn around now. The will has believed that it must sacrifice in the name of love by taking in denial and death and holding it so long that the spirit can have everlasting life. The will has actually been loving enough that it has tried to do this, and has believed that I am so loving that I could not have assigned it this role unless it was deserved. The mother has tried everything to make herself give in and accept death, but cannot stand the compression involved. To be living, vibrating essence, experiencing the compression it takes to be reduced to nothing, has to be the most terrible torture there is. It is only spirit polarity people who do not understand this already. And yet, many of them have shamed the will polarity people by trying to give spirit polarity this understanding. Many spirit polarity people have told will people they are spiritually inferior for not being able to accept death, and what's more, accept it with the poise the spirit polarity has demonstrated. It is impossible for the will polarity to do this. The will polarity cannot die without feeling it has no place to go, because it cannot lift out of the body the way the spirit has been able to do. Will has felt abandoned when spirit has left it at death. Even body has an ability to polarize to spirit and abandon the will to itself. Spirit and heart are not really separate from will and body, but the split between them has been going on for so long that almost everyone believes that will is supposed to get denied and body is supposed to serve the spirit until it dies. Heart is the Son of God, but even this just has not been fully understood on earth. I have 4 parts, not just 2, but the split between the spirit and the flesh has been so deep and has gone on for so long that it is not going to be easy to change the conditioning in the will. The will has been told for so long that it is not a part of me that, even now, it is still having trouble believing that it is a part of me. Well, what about divine will, then? The subject of divine will is so replete with misunderstandings that I am having to send not one, but several books to earth to say what needs to be said about the will. I have desired to be accepted for what I have to say and not judged again. To get these understandings, I had to go way back and look at everything. I saw that the more free the will is, the more light my creation manifests. You also need to understand that I have given this channeling in the face of great difficulty on the part of the person receiving it. She has been so triggered into her own process so many times that she has been almost unable to continue, and yet she has appreciated the healing brought to her by these understandings, and has tried her best to bring them forward in the most clear manner possible. She has not been able to receive some things yet, but you have no readiness to hear them yet either. I have also had to make concessions to the English language that I do not like having to make, in order to get these teachings into words for you. There is not a language on earth today that contains all the concepts that I need, although some contain more than others. I am currently using time as a reference point for the progression of consciousness because time is how events have been experienced on earth. It is not possible to give these understandings another way right now and make sense of what you need to be told. I have requested that there be no editing because no one understands this material enough to edit it without increasing the risk of misinterpretation. I have a reason for everything I have done here. If you have frustration that you cannot follow this writing or understand it, or if you have fear that it is not right, go ahead and be frustrated, be frightened and get angry. Throw the book down if you need to. Allow yourself to get as emotionally triggered as you can, because movement in the emotional body is the most healing thing you can do now. Healing is what I have in mind, and not the doomsday that some believe the earth changes will bring. When the will breaks loose and begins to move, it is going to look like doomsday and feel like it too. But believe me, it is not doomsday. It is going to be the picture of what denial, guilt, and death have done to the loving will essence it has possessed for so long. Loving essence that has been held down shall be lifted up, and the unlovingness that has held it down shall be thrown down in its place. You have to understand that this is right in order to align with it and not be victimized by it. If you are feeling now that you want more understandings, you need to read this book and quite possibly the book I have given before this one. If you have already been working on healing the part of your will that is still vibrating enough to be recovered with outside help, you are gaining the personal power you need to heal your lost will. The time for healing your lost will come when you have readiness for it and no sooner. I have given the story in this book as the beginning in understanding original cause. The great cosmic forces involved in creation have been observed by people on earth. But these same people have not felt the cosmic forces enough to know what they really are. They have observed that the great cosmic forces are an electromagnetic field of great splendor and power, but they have not realized that this energy is the consciousness that originated everything and the mother of all life, the heart that balances it and the form that manifests it. Whether this is right or not is something that cannot be known unless it is felt to be true within the one observing it. The separation of form and essence that has taken place on earth has made it difficult for the ones that have form to feel what their essence is, or to know whether they have perceived it correctly or not. Recovering the will so that the truth can be felt is the only way the truth will ever be known. I am not going to allow man to continue dissecting me to try to find out what I am, because man can never know as long as his mind gives him theories, and he denies the feeling body that can let him know what is true understanding and what is not. I have found that most of these men do not seek true understanding. They seek instead to take my power and use it themselves. If they take this power and use it without will to guide them, they will destroy everything I have created. This is their intent, no mistake about it, and when they do it, they must destroy only that which is desired to go. I have given the story in this book to help you understand that the great cosmic forces love and feel have heart and express themselves in creation. This story is not meant to be taken as symbolic only, although there are symbols in the story. They have the integrity of being the actual experiences which took place and also became the models for everything else. As models, they have also become symbols, just as one man's story can speak for others. The experiences I had originally have become the model for all who would follow after me. I have originated everything that is. I had consciousness before I had force. I have originated even the great cosmic forces that I am. I have experienced myself in order to know myself, and I have to teach you in the order in which I learned it myself, or you will not have the ability to learn it at all. The truth never lies, but the truth also does not give what cannot be accepted. If those who have intent to kill me ask me how they can do this, I will not tell them. I seek life, and I have had to understand how to live in order to have life. There are many ways in which living essence can be run down until it no longer exists. At times I have felt that the manifested spirits all had intent to kill themselves in this way. I saw that many had desire to kill the mother who gave them life. Many have acted as though they once had been given life. They didn't need their mother anymore. I saw that these did not understand what life is. The manifested spirits must understand now that I am God, because I generate the life that sustains them. and they are manifested spirits because they must receive from me, or they cannot live. I have gone around and around on this point with many spirits who want to insist that they are God the same as I am. I have given them attention because I had something to learn here. Now that I have learned it, I have little patience left for these spirits unless they have intent to learn from me now. If these spirits have intent to go on talking to themselves, they can do it without my presence. On the other hand, neither will I any longer tolerate the reversed patterns of this denial of me, which falsely worships an image of me that suits the purpose of the ones worshipping it. Death is the intent of both of these groups. The one kills in my name, and the others serve death by saying that my light is not necessary in order to have life. The lost will is will that had to go outside of me to find out whether I had just said it right or not. Lost will has barely survived what it has had to experience to gain the understanding I am giving now. If I had had another way to learn what had to be learned, I would not have had the mother go outside of me. I had guilt for a long time that the mother was the only one that could learn these things. The guilt vanished when I accepted myself for what I really am. I have the light that is life, and the mother gives me the means to exist. She experiences, but without me she cannot understand what her experiences mean. She has no way to know without me, and I have no way to know without her. The electro and magnetic are not meant to be separated from one another. Polarized, yes, but not separated. Heart is the result of our joining, and heart is the balance needed to create. Anything that is not created from heart balance cannot last long. Body or form gives the reflection we need to see what it is that we have created. I have 4 parts, and none are meant to be separated from the others. Spirit, will, heart, and body must all be together in a state of balance and alignment for life to last. Even a small imbalance or lack of alignment can grow into something that can kill the rest if it is not healed. Lost will must heal now, and everyone on earth has lost will. If you desire to live, I urge you to read this book and all the other ones I am giving now. Understanding these teachings is not going to be an easy thing to do. You must experience these teachings to know that they are right. Lost will can be healed, but you must not think it is going to be as easy as healing the personal will you began with. Lost will has never known God. Lost will has never known anything but denial, guilt, and death. Not only must lost will realize that it can throw these things off, it is going to have to gather the vibratory power to do it and the ability to know me. Lost will is going to have to open, and it must receive me this time instead of death. Anything that looks like death to it is going to make it move to close up again in fear that death is what it is again receiving. Your body holds some of this lost will, but much of it is in other people that you do not know are you. Healing lost will out there in others is not possible. You are going to have to learn how to bring this essence within you and heal it there. Lost will has literally been fragmented out of the parent spirit to whom it belongs and cannot respond to anything you tell it until you learn how to vibrate it. You must understand that fragmentation is most of the reason that there are so many people on earth now. Fragmentation is a subject unto itself. During the course of this story, I will refer to what lost will holds. When I mention it, you need to know that something has fragmented out that must be recovered later. At times, I will not even mention it because I want you to learn to notice this on your own. I am not going to give you any more understanding on lost will right now, because you are going to have to feel it more to be able to understand it. Suffice it to say that most of the people on earth are not real. If you have a feeling of shock now, then shock is what you are going to have to feel to understand this. Getting through shock is an important skill to have if you want to recover your lost will. Getting through shock involves movement in the will rather than shutting down the emotional body and making judgments that allow you to lift out of the experience. Even though I know it was a necessary experience for everyone involved, I still would have rathered that we did not have to have the experience of lost will. I tried to spare as many as I could the experience of feeling it, but most of the spirits would not listen to me, and thought I was having an experience that they should also have to be like me. Now that the manifested spirits have lost will, it must be recovered either by the ones who created it, or by the mother. If not, it is only a matter of time until death takes over. I have nothing more to say in this introduction, so I'll end it with my blessings and the hope that each of you has intent to live takes these teachings in and finds the help you need there. The first creation. I have always been, but realizing I had existence took a long time. There was a point in my progression when I became aware that I had existence. When I became aware of myself, I already knew many things, but I had to realize them. When consciousness became aware that it had existence, it had to realize everything. Nothing was realized yet except that I had become aware of myself. Consciousness had to feel also, or it could not know. In fact, a feeling of having consciousness is the way in which I realized I had consciousness. There were no words at first, only a feeling that I had existence. I had desire to know more. Already, although I did not know it, I had lost will that did not believe I could know more. I had given birth to fear and did not know it because I had no understanding. This fear then became lost will because I did not realize that I had to allow myself to feel it. I had a desire not to believe that I could know nothing more about myself, and so I ignored the fear. Ignoring this fear gave birth to denial, which the fear then received from me. I did not know then that I was love, and I did not realize I had given unlovingness in the form of denial of my love to my fear. I did realize that something did not feel good. I had had an experience, and I pondered it. I had a beginning concept of progression or time, although no way to measure it. I realized that I had pondered this not feeling good someplace in myself for a while. I had the concept of a place within myself then also. I tried to find the place that did not feel good, so I know it. I had just started my search when I realized that there were many more places that did not feel good than I had realized before I began looking for them. In realizing I felt bad, I realized I had been feeling good. I wondered if it was right to try to feel myself. I wondered if it was right to feel that some places felt good and others did not. I wondered if trying to feel them made those places not feel good. I felt confusion and fear. I wanted something that could explain it to me so I could know. I felt lonely and somewhat timid about trying to feel myself for fear of what I might find. All of this passed fleetingly through my consciousness while I was trying to ignore it in favor of my desire to know more. My desire to know more was leading me on. I found out many things in my own way at the time. I stumbled onto most of them by having an experience and then realizing it. I felt most impatient with myself. Already guilt had been born in me as a little voice telling me that I should be doing better than I was doing. I had realized many more things than I could list. You must feel within yourself to find your memory of what you experienced in a latent state of consciousness, for you were all there in a state of slumber, and you have the ability to know how existence began. These original experiences have affected you ever since. You need to go back to the origins of your consciousness to know what your earliest experiences were, just as I had to understand mine, because lost will has its origins there also. Most of my worshippers tell me I have always been because they have preference for a God who understands everything and tells them what they are ready to hear. You have to understand that it is not possible to know understanding unless you have the ability to feel whether it is right or not. And so some things cannot be told now because you must work your way back, starting with where you are now. And it is going to take you a long time to get to the lost will that knows what your original experiences were. You need to feel lost will moving in me now to know whether you shared the experience with me or not. My earliest memory is that of having a feeling that I was. This feeling was vague at first, but it startled me out of a reverie that I felt I had been in. I had a feeling at the time that I wished I had not startled myself out of the reverie. Lost will has this feeling now. Some lost will does not want to move for fear movement will take it out of its reverie. As I tell this story, you need to realize that everything I say is being acted on earth right now because it has not yet been resolved. As you look around you and see this is true, you must also let yourself feel it. Because this cannot be fully understood just by seeing and thinking, I have found this out. I had a growing fear of feeling, as you may have already noticed. I wanted to feel only the bliss in which I had awakened, but I could no longer sleep all the time. I had a dilemma. Even though I had questions, I did not know how to entertain myself if I could not sleep all the time. At the same time, my great excitement over realizing that I was interfering with my sleep. I kept telling myself. I am, but what am I? Who am I? Where am I? And what does it mean to be? I had questions, so many questions about myself. Most of the time I felt that I wanted to find answers and know myself. Sometimes I had fear that I should not be having so many questions because the questions were not allowing me to be peaceful within myself. I felt urged on to find answers. I had discussions with myself. Part of me did not like it that I had awakened at all. Part of me felt all right about having consciousness as long as it could be a peaceful consciousness. There were many other small voices with points of view I will not mention now because I barely heard them then. Most of the rest of me wanted to find answers to the questions that I had. I had guilt then, too, but I did not know it was guilt that said that my search to know should not bother the part of me that had desire for peace. I felt guilty just for being and for not wanting to stay asleep. The first thing I felt I had to figure out was how to know. I had a lot of questions and almost no answers. I had desire to know, and I had feelings. I was not sure whether I had feelings or thoughts first. In my memory, it seemed as though I had experienced feelings and thoughts as one and the same thing. Perhaps only as I reflected upon them did they seem at all different or separate. I wanted to experience something more to know if I had feelings and thoughts. I was not sure if I had feelings and thoughts or even if I had experiences. Perhaps I only thought that this was happening, and it was not really happening. Absurd as it may sound, I was seized by the fear that I did not exist, but only thought that I did. Perhaps thought was all there was to me, and yet something reminded me that I had responded to myself somehow. What was it that had responded? Was it me talking to myself, or was it someone else? I felt a maddening feeling in myself, but I did not allow it to express at that time. "You're driving yourself crazy with too much thinking," something in me said. "Drop it, go back to sleep." You see, I had words already, although I did not then actually speak or say to myself, "Oh, I have words." I was just in some way I did not understand, letting myself know how I felt. Already I had a desire to split myself in pieces, so that some of me could go back to sleep and some of me could go on searching for the answers to my many questions. Some of me still had a desire to sleep, but most of me was already busy in my mind and moving so fast that I thought I did not sleep anymore. I had a plan that I thought would let me know whether the thoughts or feelings were first or causal. I felt that I had to know because I did not like having to feel feelings that did not feel good, and I wanted to find out if I could get rid of them. From the beginning, I had a feeling that something within me did not belong there, but it has taken all this time to figure out exactly what it is. Then I just felt it, and did not know the difference between feeling it and it. For this reason, the will feared from the very beginning that it could not let me know how it felt unless it felt good. Even though I had all these questions, I still needed time to sleep. I realized that even in my sleep, some parts of myself were aware and other parts were not. I had another question then. Was the unawareness part of me or not? I had to know whether I had awareness in all of me or not. I did have feelings, and now I had a plan that feelings could let me know whether I was alive or not. The question of whether I was alive or not gave me another realization. If I did not know whether I existed or only thought that I did, then I had an imagination. Still, I had to know whether I was real or not. Lost will does not know whether it is part of me or not, and is only just now going to find out that it is a part of me. Lost will is just now going to find out that it is a part of me because I did not know myself in the beginning, and my efforts to know myself did not give me all the information I needed. This was because I had frightened the will out of giving me all the input I needed. I have gone on for as long as I can on with parts of the will lost outside of myself. The lost will must come in now and be healed, not only because it has been lost as long as it can stand to be, but also because the will needs to open more space if my light is going to expand anymore. Evolving light is expanding light. and so there cannot be any more evolvement until there is openness to receive it. In other words, resistance to my light must now move back. If you have a feeling that God could not have been this unknowing in the beginning, then you need to consider that you may be getting triggered without knowing it. This is good if you want to heal your own lost will. Now to return my plan to know myself. I felt that I had to return to the original state in which I had discovered myself and experience it again. I have since realized that this could not really be done, but at the time I did not know it. The success I did have was due to my memory, but I didn't know that at the time either. At that time I thought I had actually gone back to sleep in all of myself and was going to awaken again. I had the experience all right, and much to my surprise, I noticed something I had noticed the first time. Movement had awakened me. I had a new dilemma on my hands now. Not only had I discovered movement, but I had a feeling it was not me that had moved. I was mad at myself for not even knowing if it was me or not that had moved, and I was also angry at this movement, whatever it was, because it had awakened me into the torment I was experiencing instead of leaving me in a reverie where I had felt such bliss. I resented being awakened by this thing that I felt was not me, and I blamed it. Before I even knew that I had a will, all of these feelings became lost will, because I also had an ecstasy of awareness that I did not want to disturb with what I have just described, for fear it would turn the ecstasy sour. Part of the lost will from then on has tried to hide from me for fear it was the cause of my problem. This thing that had responded to me gave me strange feelings that I was not alone, and I still have lost will manifestations from this time that give others eerie feelings that they are not alone. And yet, if something is there, it cannot be found. You see, I was creating already and did not know it. Everything rippling through my consciousness either passed on through and was gone, or it found a home in the magnetic essence which gave it the means to remain present. What I was creating could not go forth into manifestation, but if it found a home, it was becoming present within me as differentiations in my consciousness. All of this consciousness had points of view that were not always aligned with what I wanted my main purpose to be. I had desire to know myself, as I have said, and I did not know if it was only me I was getting to know. I had intent to ignore things I did not like, but I did not know that. Then I was subtly deciding that these things were not me. I had quite a bit of lost will before I really got started in the creating business. I had desire to get rid of anything I did not like, and I also needed to know what was out there beyond what I'd already felt. I had it neatly rationalized, but I had intent to get the thing that had moved to go out there and tell me what it found. The thing went along with this plan of mine, even though it did not like my plan, because of the fear and guilt it was already holding without my knowing it was holding these things. The thing that had moved was the will, of course, but I had not realized that either. I wanted it to go, to move however it could, and see what it found. And no question about it, I planned to lose this thing once it let me know what it had found. I had fear of the thing, and the thing had fear of me, even though we did not feel comfortable with one another. Moving apart still seemed more frightening than holding still. We had a standoff for a time I cannot measure. I had feelings moving so fast in me, I did not know how to measure what happened. The thing had feelings of guilt that made it feel it had to help me solve the problems that had caused me. The thing also had a fear of moving that I did not understand at the time. It seemed to me that this thing would move when I didn't want it to, and then resist moving when I wanted it to move. The will felt guilty because it knew what I was feeling. I had judged the will already without realizing it, and the will took this in. Fear and guilt in the will increased, and I did not know why. I was feeling like I did not want it around anymore, and I gave it a push that sent it moving out much faster than it was prepared to handle. Pushing the will in this way let me know that I could move too. I had so many feelings rushing into me concerning this movement that I was awash in them for quite some time before I felt an urge to try and find out what that thing I had pushed out was experiencing out there. I was afraid I had blown my whole experiment because I had been so busy with my own realizations that I hadn't received anything from the thing. Then I felt it and realized it had been feeling it all along without noticing. I had been experiencing a great rush of speed, almost like a wind. But what jolted me into awareness of it was that I began receiving from the thing a growing feeling of terror that it could not stop itself. I suddenly had a desire to help it, but I could not. I did not know how. I had a feeling of helplessness. The will has had such a fear of displeasing me that it has not been able to tell me until now that it has a terror of falling and a terror of speed that has not passed from lost will even now. At the time it first fell, I could do nothing but watch it fall in space until it was gone. I had another understanding now. I could see. I had just seen the will fall away from me, and nothing else had ever been so vivid in my mind before. I had had a feeling that I could see, but I hadn't had anything to see before. Now I had just witnessed what I thought was another being go into darkness and not return. I had an uneasy feeling that this had not been pleasant for it, and I began to feel guilty that I had caused it to happen. I did not know then that I had grown bigger, and could not help but move the will back to make more room for my increasing light. I felt guilty that I had pushed it so hard, but fear and ineptitude had caused me to do it. I felt it wasn't right to have done it, but I had done it involuntarily. I didn't know I was going to do it until I had already done it. I had a feeling of remorse and felt I had lost something I had to have. I had loved the thing that had moved and did not know it until I lost it. I had discovered love by losing it. I had great emotional depression for a long time. The second creation. I had lost the part of my will that could not move. I had great peace now, but I did not care. I did not care about anything. I had no movement in my will now. I had lost everything that had desire to know more. I had lost most of my feeling, and I had feeling I could not move. I had a fear I wasn't getting any place now because I had no impetus to push me onward. My plan had not been a good one, and my bad intent had cost me more than I had realized it had. The will was lost in space, and I had no way to get it. I had nothing holding me back from my loneliness now, and I experienced the most intense loneliness I have ever known. The lost will was gone. I was just sure of it, and if the lost will could go, then I could go. I had even more terror now than just when I was getting started. I could not live. I had more feelings to feel now, but they were the most unpleasant feelings I had yet known. I became overwhelmed with terror that I was falling in space myself, and that my light was getting snuffed out by the overwhelming darkness around me. I had a fear that there was nothing out there and no one to help me. Finally, I had a feeling that I must try to grab for something, but I could find nothing to grab. I grabbed anyway because I could not help myself. Lo and behold, I fell upon something dark and heavy. It ignited at my touch and exploded with a golden light. The golden light surrounded me and gave me a warmth that I had not known for so long that I had forgotten I had ever had it. I sobbed with gratitude for having found that warmth again in the midst of my terrible terror. Nothing could hold me back any more. I was going to have to find the lost will. I had the desire to find it now, and I felt that the warmth I now had would enable me to move. I grabbed at everything I passed now to see if it would explode at my touch. I tried hurling my entire being against these things I found that were larger. Many, but not all of these things burst into light at my touch, but they required an intense touch in order to move. I was striking myself against many hard and dark things, but I was receiving a good feeling of increasing light from doing this. I had great joy now, for I realized I was finding the lost will. The lost will was letting me know that it was not gone, but had lost the ability to move and feel. The will had no way to let me know it was out there hoping for rescue from the great terror in which it had ceased to feel or move. Why it had stopped moving I did not yet know, but I was overwhelmed with happiness that I had found it. I had guilt mixed in with my love then, but I did not have enough experience to realize it yet. The guilt made me feel happier to find the lost will than I would have been had I not felt responsible for losing it. I now had to realize that feeling the will's terrible experience was what had made me feel so guilty for having pushed it out. The great peace I sought to attain by pushing out the restless part of myself had not been peace after all, because I couldn't rest easy with myself in the presence of the guilt over what I had done. I had guilt telling me that morals were necessary, whether I liked it or not. And I did not like it because guilt seemed to be saying that I was not right to have done what I wanted to do. I had desire to get rid of the will, and I could not be happy afterwards because I had guilt. I began to notice that I had guilt most of the time I had feelings. If I had happiness over an experience, I felt guilty that it wasn't right to have so much exhilaration in the face of the part of me that still wanted to sleep. If I had fear, I felt guilt for having fear, as though part of me did not like it. No matter what part of me felt, if another part of me did not feel the same, I had guilt telling me that it was unloving to have movement without agreement, and that it was unloving to disagree. Why did I want to have feelings at all? I had forgotten all about my plan to know myself. I was awash in emotions once more, and getting no place it seemed. I had a feeling I could not move any more without emotions getting in the way. I was so mad at myself over this I could not stand it any more. I pushed on the will again. The will was so afraid that it had the feelings that were displeasing me, and felt so guilty for having these feelings that it did not object to me pushing on it again until I had already done it. As soon as the will felt itself moving away from me, the terror of its first experience was activated. I had intent to get rid of the will again, but the will refused to allow it this time. The terror was greater than the guilt, and so instead of falling away, the will grabbed me and pulled itself back in. Immediately the will felt ashamed of itself, but nonetheless it refused to let me go. The will begged me not to make it leave and promised not to make me unhappy any more if it could help me. The will had more fear of going out there than it had of me now. The will also had more desire to please me than ever, because the will feared that I had tried to get rid of it because it had displeased me. The will had gone out there because it feared I had good reason to get rid of it, and guilt had told the will that it was right to fear that I had reason to get rid of it. The will also felt that it had suffered so much in that experience that it was not right to have to suffer that way any more. I promised the will it would not have to suffer like that any more if I could help it. I held the will for as long as I can remember then, and the will held on to me also. I had a desire not to allow the will to move. I wanted to sleep now. I had an intense desire to rest after the experience we both had. Even though the will had exhaustion, it was not ready to sleep. It needed to move until it felt more comfortable, but its fear and guilt would not let it. After all, it had promised me it would not move when I did not want it to. Long after I had already gone to sleep, the will still was not comfortable with itself and needed to move. I had created the impression in the will that more than one presence meant that we were going to have to deny ourselves in favor of the other one in order to get along. The will really wanted to please me, but the will could not sleep, and the will also had another fear. Besides fearing that moving would displease me, it feared not moving. Allowing itself to go to sleep, now that it was afraid of going unconscious, was very difficult for it to do. Finally, the will forced a very strong intent to sleep upon itself, and when it was not noticing, fell into a very deep sleep in which it began to move. At first, the will just twitched a little. When it did not seem to notice, the will allowed itself more movement. It began quietly wiggling, first in one part and then in another. If I stirred, the will would stop until I appeared to be deeply asleep again. The will had fear of displeasing me all the while it was moving. This fear increased its guilt. That fear was what it always gave me. After the will had been wiggling for quite some time, it realized that it was still afraid I would push it out again if its movement displeased me. The will had desire to move even more than it was already moving, but would not let itself for fear of what would happen. I was aware of all of this as though sleeping with one eye open. I had a desire not to harm the will any more, and I tried to let the will's movement rock me in a way that I could find pleasant without being awakened. Soon I did find it to be pleasant to be. I have no word for this in English, so I will try to approximate it with several words. Gently and warmly rippled, rocked and lifted in space all at once. I did have an intense desire not to allow movement that I could not handle, and the will was doing her best not to get thrown out any more. I felt we had an agreement now that was working because I was getting intense pleasure from what I was feeling. I was having such intense pleasure. I had an orgasm without knowing orgasm was possible. I felt intense activity for a long time, and yet I wondered if the will had shared it with me. I was in a pleasant state of floatings and was just drifting back into sleep when I realized that things were too quiet. I had an eerie feeling that the will had frozen in the terror that it was not right to have done this. I had a feeling that the will had been holding back all along out of fear of disturbing me, and now was not going to let me feel her until she knew whether I was angry or not. I had to let her know that I was not angry with her over this, and yet in realizing she was hiding, I suspected she had not experienced the pleasure I had, or she would know I was not angry. I then experienced guilt that she had not experienced the same pleasure. Lost will has my blame as well as all the other feelings I thought I had to deny here to make our partnership work. I had to feel her to know whether I was right or not, and she was trying not to let me find her. It was not easy to make her hear me above the roar of fear and guilt within her, but I finally succeeded in getting her to listen. She was very relieved and glad to realize at this time I had not minded the movement and had, in fact, received immense pleasure from it. I told her that I wanted to rest now, but later I would enjoy it if she made pleasurable movements again. I wonder if I could ever have pleasure as intense as the original and unexpected pleasure, but I also had a strong desire to experience more pleasure after having had so much fear, pain, and loneliness. Rest did not prove to be possible now, as I had a great attack of loneliness just remembering how it had been for me for so long. I had managed to get the will to listen to me, but the will still had not moved or let me feel her. I had experienced pleasure with the will now, drifted towards sleep, and startled with the eerie feeling that I was all alone again. I could not check the feeling. I had held in more loneliness than I knew, and it all seemed to come bursting forth now. Maybe I was only talking to myself after all. I realized now that I had lost will I didn't know I had, and that it had been touched and moved by the explosion of my orgasm. I had really thought I had a her in there that had a complementary function to mine. I had just felt for the first time how good it could be to have a complementary relationship, and now it seemed to be gone. My loneliness seemed more intense than if I had never known the pleasure of her. I beseeched her to come out and be partners with me, and she would not. She did not trust me. I tried many things to coax the will to move and let me feel her, and none of them worked. The more things I tried without success, the more I began to fear that I was alone. Perhaps the will had sneaked out before I could push her. Perhaps there was nothing in there to come out. If I had scared the will that much with my orgasm, perhaps I had experienced something that wasn't right. I had experienced pleasure, and apparently will had not. Otherwise, wouldn't she be here with me now in happy celebration of our newfound ability to get along? I felt worse now than ever. I had known more pleasure than I had ever felt before, and now more loneliness than I had ever felt before. I had fear at first that I could not get along with another being, and had desire to get rid of her. Then I feared I was getting what I deserved for having mistreated her so much in the past. I had a voice of guilt telling me that punishment was what I deserved because I had misjudged and mistreated her. I had even called her it and the bothersome thing in the beginning without bothering to feel the thing enough to find out it had all the qualities now associated with feminine. I had hurled her out into space to be lost in terror. I had feared this thing, and without much effort to any other approach, I had tried to get away from me, so I did not have to fear it or be bothered by it. I also realized again that I had loved it or her, and had not allowed myself to realize that I could not get rid of the feeling I didn't like without getting rid of her. She was changeable. I knew that now. I had thought unpleasantness was a thing that I could get rid of, and had not realized it also had the feelings I now loved. I saw that movement had brought it from feelings I didn't like into feelings I did like. Now when I had realized all of this, why wasn't the will opening to me? I had to ponder that question for a long time to know that the will had to move the feelings it already had to be able to receive new feelings. It did not matter how much I now had to tell it or how hard I tried to get it across. Will was not able to receive me unless it opened, and it had to move to open. I did not know then how to get it moving. I did not know that I had to help it move by going into the will and receiving what it was holding so that it could move on to something else. I thought I only had to let it know that I no longer had the feelings toward it, and that I had been having. I didn't know I had to feel with it. And so there I sat, preaching to the will and exhorting her to come forth and be with me. It was a long time before I understood that the will was too afraid of displeasing me to move and come forth, even if it wanted to, which it did not at the time. The will was holding still because she had so much fear of feeling what she was feeling. She had clenched to avoid the pain of it. She did not know she had my acceptance this time to move her pain by moving her feelings. My light and love would have flowed into her this time, but she did not know it. She was caught in fear from the past that I would not accept her. She feared that if she opened to expression how she felt, she would receive denial of light and love again. She had many more feelings at the time also, but she could not move any of them because she had too much fear of me pushing her out. She had thought I enjoyed moving with her this last time, but she was too afraid to find out for sure in case she didn't have the right understanding. The terror of falling in space and becoming unable to move or vibrate in any way has haunted the will ever since the first experience, and this is why the will must be healed now. The will cannot stand the idea of going to any more terror of that intensity. The will has held the deepest terror of that experience all of this time and has no desire to have to experience it any more. The terror never moved in the lost will, and it has to move now. This terror cannot be held any more. Guilt has said, for as long as terror has been there, that it must be held, but guilt, I have come to find, is not a loving presence. Guilt is not connected with how it feels to have to hold this terror, or how it feels to be the essence that is trapped in this state of terror. The will has experienced this terror over and over again on earth, and has not been able to move out of it because guilt has told it that it is more loving to hold it than to express it because others do not like to be around this terror. Guilt has told the will that no one has acceptance for this terror. The will has continued to believe this because in the beginning I had no acceptance for it. I have acceptance for it now. Healing it is not possible without feeling it, but feeling terror with light pouring into it and lifting it is a very different experience for this essence than it has been having. Terror has been experiencing itself in ways that have no love or acceptance presence. If terror has tried to move upon experiencing itself, it has been given yet more denial of light and love, and guilt has been there to shame the terror and tell it should be able to find a way to accept its experience. Guilt says to terror, your feelings are just resistance to God, and if you had acceptance for your experience and trust for God, you would not feel terror. Guilt has been telling terror that it is not right to object to any of the experiences it has been given. The will has been feeling it cannot oppose the spirit no matter what the spirit has in mind for it. This is a very old misunderstanding, but the lost will has not been able to straighten it out because it has not moved. I have long since abandoned this approach, but guilt has gone on with it, powered by the essence of spirit that still wants to believe it's not right to let the will move unless it's going to be pleasant. The will feels its terror alone then, having no way to get the healing light of love from its spirit. The will has held this terror from the very beginning, but I did not know that its initial life experience caused this. I had not gone back on myself like the will, and I did not really know what this had felt like to the will. I had a feeling it was not possible to have terror for long. I thought it was the same for the will. I had felt terror for a while when I began falling in space, and I had gotten over it. I felt that if I gave her more time, the will would emerge again and be with me. I waited. During the time I waited, I had so many feelings and thoughts go through me that I have no particular desire to describe them all now. But I do have a desire to bring forward the feelings that I had in a state of denial then, because these feelings still have presence on earth. I had fear that there really wasn't another being hiding within me. I had feelings of inadequacy that I couldn't make the will come out. I had plenty of anger that I did not want to express for fear it would make the will hide longer. I had guilt that I had these feelings instead of acceptance for the will hiding within me. I had resentment that I had pleaded and she had not responded. I had grief that the will would not come out and experience with me. I had fear that she did not love me now and never had. I had guilt that I did not love her originally, and she had pain now and would not allow me to know it. I had guilt that I had pushed on her, and I had guilt that even now I could not accept the will's feeling because I did not like it that she would not come out. What I did accept in myself then, that has relevance now, was the realization that I was now thinking of this other being who had originally been so annoying to me as a her, and myself as a him for reasons I did not understand, and which I pondered now. She had impressed me with a lot of things that I had to realize now. I cannot mention all of them now, just as I could not with myself, but I would like to mention some of the ones that have caused problems all along. She gave me the feeling I could not live without her any more. I had rejection for this because I did not like the feeling of being dependent on another being. I also had a feeling that she could not live without me, but I ignored it because I still had independence in mind. She gave me a feeling I could not move without her any more, and she gave me the feeling that I could not feel without her. She communicated with me by giving me feelings, and let me know that she had to experience something coming into her in order to respond with the feelings that she gave me. If she gave me feelings in response to what I gave her, then I felt that she must have experienced pleasure when I did. I felt annoyed and somewhat vulnerable if this was how it was going to be, because she had given me a lot of feelings I did not like. If I had caused these feelings, I did not know how I had done so. I felt that I could not know how I was going to feel in any given experience until I was having it. I had resentment and gratitude that I had a partner. I did not know how to balance the two feelings. Since I did not feel good about myself when I felt resentment, I decided not to allow myself to feel that anymore. I decided to be grateful that I was not alone. My resentment went into a state of denial and caused many problems that I'm just now being able to solve. The will received the denied resentment along with the gratitude and love I was now openly extending, and did not feel I was being honest with her. She was not altogether sure, though, whether I was being as honest with her or not, because she was also holding back some old feelings she had toward me. She did not know if it was right or not, but I had made her feel that I wanted her to do so. I have understanding now that it is not right to hold back feelings, but then I did not know that feelings had to move to change. Then I felt I had to draw the line someplace and not allow indulgence in feelings I did not like. After all, I had enough problems already, and lost will holding back did not seem to be one of them. I had questions that needed answers, and that seemed much more important than how I felt. I had fear, yes, but I still had to know how I came to be. I had to know where I was. I had to know what I was, and I had to know how to go on living because I became attached to my own existence. I had already observed space, but I did not know if it had limits or not. I had observed myself to be light, and had observed space to be dark, but I was not sure whether this was right or not because I also observed space appearing to be light if I shone into it. I had already looked around in space as much as I could from within myself, and had tried to send the will out there to look around. The will had told me that in seeing me from out in space, I did not appear to move. As the will fell in space, she had let me know that she was angry with me that I did not make a move to rescue her. Then she had become terrified that perhaps I did not have the power to rescue her. I had felt like I was moving in space, and yet she said that I was not. This puzzled me for a long time until I realized that if she felt she was falling away from me as much as I had felt I was moving away from her, we must have both moved apart from one another. I had no other point of reference earlier to know if I was moving or not, except that I had a feeling that I was. At this point in my reflections, I had a feeling of fear come into me from the will. If space has limits, perhaps we should stop moving. Then she had an immediate rush of guilt that she had given me fear again, and at the same time remembered that she had not liked it when she had stopped moving. I realized now that I had to vibrate to live, and when the will held too still as she had been doing, it did not feel right. I still had a dislike of feeling fear, but I did not like it that the will was being so still in there. The fear at least let me know that something had to be in there, whether it was just me or not, but where had it gone? Even though I had been busy in my mind, I had been waiting for the will to respond to me. I had hoped that if she gave me a response at all, it would bring her forth again, but it had not, because she still had too much guilt over feeling fear. I did not know then that guilt prevents movement, but I know it now. I gave up on waiting for her and tried to pull her out. This she had aversion to and shrunk into me even more, so that I could not find her. I had a feeling I did not need her if she did not like me. Then she let me know that she did like me. I tried to coax her out some more. I had a feeling it would not work, and it didn't. I hated her for a moment there. She had made me feel powerless and exasperated. I was frustrated, angry, and hurt.